Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Dennisha Denney will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. I asked Newman Peters to come on the show, mainly because he's a very dear friend and he's been a cheerleader for me from the time I opened my brokerage all the way to today. But I wanted everyone to see his heart and to see his story. And you're going to have stories from the old days, how Greenville used to be, and get to hear about Greenville today. I can't wait for you to hear my conversation with Newman. Hey y'all, I'm Dennisha Denney, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we're sitting down at the Landmark on Lee on the third floor called The Landing. And our guest today is Mr. Newman Peters. How are you today, Newman?
I'm fine.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
Well, it's a privilege.
Well, listen, I have to tell our audience how I got to know you and why you're so near and dear to my heart.
Okay.
When I was opening my real estate company in the middle of a recession, I needed a place to start my company, and I came to you for a rental space out on 34th.
I remember well.
And I thought, I don't know if Newman's going to give me a chance or not, but I won't know unless I ask.
Yeah.
And I came to you, and you took a chance on me to open my first brokerage, and I just want to officially tell you thank you so much for believing in me and giving me that opportunity.
Well, it was a privilege, and I'm glad I could be part of it, and it's been great watching you develop and come as far as you have. It's one of, if not one of the leading realtors in Greenville.
Oh, thank you.
From the little girl that started by herself and one helper.
I know, it's pretty phenomenal where God's
It
brought
is.
us.
It
we have
is.
25 agents now,
Yeah.
and we have 3 locations, and in a matter of 12 years, and
Yeah.
it's just phenomenal. So.
Yeah, I hated it when you outgrew me.
I know, I hated it too. I knew I was going to see you every month on the 1st.
Yeah, that's right.
You were going to be
I
coming
made my
by.
round.
Yes, you did.
Clean the car wash and walk across the parking lot.
That's right. When I saw your truck pull in, I was like, okay, get the checkbook ready.
Yeah.
Newman's coming for the rent.
Yeah. But there's a lot of businesses that started there in that office space, and it's been great watching them grow. I mean, like yours, Rafter P. I mean, they started off with a half space, a whole space, and then later we got together and built their office and a shop back there, and then he ended up buying the whole thing.
That is phenomenal. I'm so proud of him. It
I
is
am
so
too.
cool to see him grow to the
Yeah.
level, and now he's expanded in new
Yeah.
locations too.
Uh-huh.
And so that's
And
awesome.
then just like Leah's, she did, Rosa, and then with her beauty shop. And I mean, there's a lot of them that, and I've left out but I've been blessed with what I call extra kids and grandkids now. Is young people starting out in their business and watch them develop and making it successful.
I love that you do that for people. And were you ever worried about us? Were you ever worried, what are we going to do if these kids don't make it?
No, I mean, I was never worried when I came on the first and left with an envelope.
That's true. You never had to leave empty-handed.
No,
so.
I didn't, no.
That was a good thing. Well, Newman, let's talk about your life. You grew up here in Greenville, right? And
Yeah,
have been
I
here all
always
your life.
say I was born here, and so was my daddy.
Oh.
And I've got some old city directories, and my granddaddy was here, I know, in 1911.
Really?
But he was probably here before that. But
What did he do here
he
in 1911?
worked for the railroad.
Okay. Wow.
And I was blessed to have 2 wonderful parents. I couldn't have had better. And I had access through them some of the best mentors growing up that somebody could have in business. And then later on, when I decided to go in the funeral business, through some other connections, I had some of the best funeral home operators that mentored me well.
Isn't it great when people are willing to pay that forward and
Yeah.
share with you, what they went through in those trenches
Yeah.
as they were growing? Now, what did your parents do?
Well, my mother was I call her my mama. She was the mama of the three of us boys, 3 years apart. I was the oldest. And my dad grew up here, and he worked for everything he had, and the Lord blessed him. He believed in working hard and saving you money. And he was in the insurance business. He had Union Security Life Insurance Company, which is catty-cornered from where we are. It used to be.
Oh.
And then he had it was James Peters Funeral Home. They bought it in 40 or 41, and it was old Near and Librand Funeral Home. And then later it came James Coker Peters, and then it changed on to Coker Matthews Peters. And then when Charlotte and I bought the old Sarles and Son Funeral Home, they dropped the name off of it, and we had it. And I mean, the Lord has blessed me all my life. I was blessed with good parents, and he stayed with me a lot of times when I got away from him, but he stayed with me.
That is one of the really amazing things about God. He really never leaves us.
He doesn't.
We're the ones who walk further away from him,
Yeah.
and he's always still there. We just have to choose to walk back
Yeah.
to get closer to him.
And we developed a business, and we sold it in 92. And I went back to what I really liked to do growing up, and that was tend to my cows and my horses. And then as Greenville grew, that farm, when Daddy bought it in 52 or 3, was called 5 miles from town. And you measured that by 5 miles from the post office, which is where we are, or the courthouse. And now they call it in the middle of town. And then after that, Daddy had also put the first self-service car wash in on Moulton on Stanford and Wesley, a little old 2-bay one. And so I decided that I'd put one out there on that farm, and it worked out good. And then as other things did, we built the office building, and I built those other 2 buildings. And that was kind of what all that involved.
Did you start out in the funeral business when you grew up? Is that what you went into first?
When I grew up, I had a Farmall Cub tractor, and I mowed lots all over Greenville. There was an older black guy that had a team and mowed, and we were the only 2 that mowed vacant lots. And I probably have mowed then every old lot in this town. I can still drive by some and show you where a well is or something.
Really?
Or something that I ran into or hit there.
Something you hit and messed
Yeah.
up your shredder.
And no, it's an old sickle mower. I mean, it was way before the shredders.
Oh, before that even.
The tractor wasn't that big by now, standards now.
Right.
In fact, that tractor in road gear wouldn't run as fast as the tractor I have now pulling a 15-foot shredder. I mean, it's amazing how that's changed. And when I was in high school, I worked at the International Harvester dealer and Farmall dealer on Saturdays and during the summer before I started working at the funeral home.
Okay.
And then I worked at the service station some and did all kinds of odd stuff and was pretty versatile. And just kind of went on from there.
Did you feel like you had to go in the funeral business because
No,
that was
I
a family
did.
business?
No, I wanted to. I was just really, I started working there in high school. I spent the night there. I was a night boy. And I worked every other night and every other Sunday and every Saturday. And that was back when funeral homes did all the ambulance work. And so I just got into that, and then I went to mortuary school, or we called it embalming school then, and got both of my license. And then I was talking to Daddy one day, a funeral home that he owned part of. We were standing there, and this guy drove by, and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "That I'm not going to mention his name." He said, "That's so-and-so. He works for his daddy. They'll never know if he could make it on his own." And I thought to myself, nobody's going to say that about me. Aww. And nobody loved their mother and daddy more than I did, or had a better one. But anyway, I got a job at a funeral home in Cooper.
Was that just to prove
Well, I mean, I was going to
wrong?
prove I could make it on my own.
On my own. I love that.
And I stayed there 2.5 years, and then my daddy had a depression and had to get out, and so they sold out of it. He sold out, and then they wanted me to come back, and I came back and worked a while, and then later got in the insurance business, and then during that time, I had several changes in my life, and some good, some bad, or some bad then good. But then later on, I got everything turned around with the Lord, and He kind of directed me back in the funeral business.
So you did take a little sabbatical.
Yeah, I did. And then we used to have our own insurance agency. I had a partner.
Okay.
And we'd worked for Mac McCall, and both of us, she was the office manager. And so we formed our own agency. She ran the office, and I did the sale. And it was another thing. My dad had been in the insurance business like that, younger as well. Mm-hmm. So I did everything. I kind of thought, well, I'll do this because he did. And then my goal was always to have 100 mother cows. Oh. And then later on, after we sold the funeral home, I had that. And so I've had a very blessed life. Mm-hmm. I've had some ups and downs and a couple of little tragedies, but that's just life. Just like my mother always said, every day's good. It's just how you take it. And you play the cards you're dealt. She was a big bridge player. And both of my parents were known for their sayings. She had a bunch of witty ones. Daddy had witty ones, business ones, and just common sense. And I'm proud to quote my daddy on a lot of things, on a lot of different things.
He left such a legacy with you.
He did. He really did.
What do you think caused him to do that? What did he do in your life to make you look up to him and respect him so much and want to be so much like him?
I just did.
Did he spend a lot of time with you?
Well, yes and no. But back then you looked up to your parents, mm-hmm. and you didn't talk back to them. If I talked back to my mother like some kids do today, I wouldn't be here.
That's true.
I've had a very blessed life, mm-hmm. and it's gotten better. I hit a kind of a down time, and you were a good friend to me during that, and you stayed my friend because you and I had several talks. And
yes, we did.
And but then it turned around, and
it did.
And so
God just keeps blessing you through all these seasons.
I'm the most blessed person you will ever know.
I believe
in more ways than one.
I believe that.
And
you mentioned the sayings that your parents were known for saying.
Yeah.
And on my whiteboard in my office, I still have this saying you said to me in 2017. And that saying was, you can do anything you set your mind to.
Okay, that was a Newman one.
That's a Newman one, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't a daddy one.
You carried on that legacy about but I don't have other quotes on my board from other people. Like, that was so impactful and such a reminder for me that I can do anything I set my mind to.
Yeah.
And you text me that sometimes just to keep
me
on track.
Well, I know, but you're a special person to the community and special to me. I don't know, but we just kind of
we've always clicked.
We have,
mm-hmm.
and your dad and I were good friends, and I got to know him from eating out.
Did y'all like to go to the same places?
Well, we'd end up there, and sometime you'd be by yourself, and there wouldn't be a place to sit down. He'd say sit down, or I would, and then I didn't know later on, his darling little daughter would be one of my tenants, and I'd end up being a real good friend.
Oh, I know. I know he had to appreciate that.
Well,
I know when he was, he had cancer, and when he passed away, he insisted that he be at Peter's funeral home, and he always respected your family so much.
Well, he did.
So.
We did his. All the bunch up there at the city.
The stories y'all could tell, but probably shouldn't.
Yeah, well, just like I was telling Judy coming over here, I said, now, when I was growing up, this was all out in the country.
Yes.
We came by the Rolling Hills post office, and the city limits then was at Stanford Street.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a 2-lane highway from there on.
What were some of the things you loved to do in town when you were a kid growing up here?
Well, I was because of Daddy, I was kind of a workaholic, but I had I had a little horse, and my mother rode, and I had a little half Shetland, Johnny Wilkins. He was a veterinarian here. That was my daddy's best friend. And Liz, his wife, was my mother's best friend growing up. And I used to go with Johnny a lot on calls. They lived next door to us for a long time. And their family's just like family to me. And Johnny found me a little half Shetland pony at Lone Oak. And that was my world. Aww. And then Mama had a Tennessee walking horse that she liked to ride. And she and I'd ride a lot. We'd ride all over everywhere. On the end of Park Street, on the north side, where there's about 3 or 4 houses now, was where our horse lot was. And we lived 3 houses south of Kavanaugh Church. And I'd ride my bicycle down there to go ride, or I'd ride them down there because Mom and Daddy both had horses. They had saddle horses, and they rode English. It embarrassed me. And then every now and then they'd go ride.
You don't want to ride with them since they rode English?
Yeah, but no, I didn't mind. I'd ride because I didn't ride English. But every now and then they'd say, Newman, just take these horses back. And then I'd have to ride down Park Street English. But that was kind of a deal. But then, like I said, when I got a little older, you'd take your horses to get their feet trimmed or shod down there behind Henley Hardware. There's a blacksmith there called George Glenn. And I'd be 10, probably 11 or 12 years old, and I'd ride one horse and lead 2 from the end of Park Street. And I could go all over Greenville on what you called alleys. There were dirt streets and the railroad track. And but I'd ride down there and do that, and I'd sit down there at George Glenn's, and all those guys would come in there to get their stuff fixed, and in between when he was doing the horses. And man, I thought that's the greatest thing there ever was. And I made some good cowboy and farm friends, and then it just kind of evolved from there. And I'm pretty versatile.
You are. What inspired you to want 100 mama cows?
I just thought that'd be a goal.
Okay.
And I got up to 120.
Oh, well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you exceeded your goal, Newman.
Well, and I did it all myself. But I mean, I enjoy it. I didn't hunt, fish, or play golf, and that's what I like to do. And then when I knew you, I did custom tractor work, and I even had a bulldozer for a good while. I like that because when I was a little kid, we'd play out in the sand pile with those Tonka toy things. They weren't even Tonkas then. And I got that bulldozer. I was getting paid to do what I used to dream about doing. I thought Charles Vance was one of the greatest guys in the world because he drove a bulldozer all day long. And he's still a good friend.
Yes. And yeah, he just lives right down the road from you, doesn't he? Did you ever get that big bulldozer that you really wanted?
No, I did. I just started that just to stir Joey up. And the boys.
You still have him stirred up over it?
No, he's got over. He's so glad I got out of all that. And met somebody else and started, and he told me, he says, Daddy, you worked all your life, just enjoy yourself. So
are you doing that now, Newman? Are you
I
enjoying
am.
yourself
I really
now?
am. I got over my pity party. Well, you know the story on that.
Know.
And kind of got back and got with it and found out there's something besides work.
You know, I don't know how much of that you want to share, but I think you could be an inspiration to people by sharing a little bit of that story if you would like to.
Well, if that's all right.
Because it's a story of hope to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a matter of the deal. You stay with the Lord, He stays with you.
Yes.
I mean, Charlotte had a stroke 4.5 years later. She took her own life, which it was something. I didn't blame her. And it's just one of those things that happen. And then, so from there, and you were a good friend. And you always have that perky smile. And it just shows that the Lord will stay with you after a divorce. And then after I had a death with that, and I just worked and came home tired.
You did.
I worked
poured yourself into
Yeah,
your work and your cows. I saw you
Yeah.
burning up the streets.
Yeah,
And you
and,
have feed on your truck.
yeah.
And
And if I went out with somebody, just a deal to go out and eat or something like that. And then I kind of met somebody that kind of changed that story. And you know the story from there.
And I do remember. I remember the sadness in your eyes. I
Yeah.
remember that
Now, that's
hurt
what
and pain.
I must have really looked manic depressive. I said, because people would say, well, what's happened to him? And
Well, you lost your partner.
yeah, I
you
mean,
know?
because we had the funeral home, and she even helped me with the cow.
Right.
And
right.
but
it was tragic. That
yeah.
was something that you had no control
No.
over. She had no control over.
No.
And you had to face death in a different way.
Yeah,
You
and
had,
that's it.
in a way you'd never had to face that
I was on the
before.
other side of the table.
What was that like being on the other side? You've always been on the side of consoling.
Well,
and
I mean,
comforting.
when I went to John Lynch's to make those arrangements, I had all the questions written down and answered. I knew the answer,
You're right, the
but
easiest
I never had been on that side of the table. I'd always been on. In my whole life, I spent helping people.
Right.
And I mean, but
And then
it's
you
like a
needed
preacher. We said, sometimes it's your time to be helped. And it's hard to do when you're not used to being helped. You're used to being the helper.
That's right. That's right.
But the whole deal to all of it is you stay with the Lord and just turn it over to Him. There's no problem too big for Him. It's
That's
like
right.
a preacher we had here, he said, if you got a problem, give it to the Lord. And pray to accept how He handles it, not you.
That's right. I
And-
always pray for His will.
No,
I've
that's
learned
right.
His
You have
will's
to
better.
do that. He said it's like the guy that gets out on the side of the road and his car breaks down. He starts walking and he wants a beautiful blonde in a Corvette to pick him up. And people come by and stop to offer him a ride and he doesn't take it. Or like the guy sitting on the roof when it's a flood and a guy comes by in a boat and says, you won't, here, let me take you. He said, no, I'm waiting on the Lord. And then somebody else comes by and then, but you just got to let Him handle it in His own time. But like I said, I've been blessed with people through the years that mentored me, that stayed with me. And I mean, when you really get down, you find out who your true friends are.
That's true.
I mean, it's the ones that stay with you. And like I said, I'm blessed with that. And I've got a bunch of young people, and I call my extra kids and extra grandkids now.
I know.
And-
I love when you still pop by the office, even though
Yeah.
you're not picking up a rent check
Yeah.
anymore.
I'm hoping to pick up a
I
contract.
know. That's right. We need to be getting you that contract
yeah,
soon.
that's right.
And we will.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
town is growing
it
so much.
really is.
And it's incredible just hearing your stories
Yeah.
of where it was to
Yeah.
where
Well,
it's going.
that's another thing that always really kind of bugged me, is people would sit there and gripe about Greenville. Well, if you don't like it, get out. I mean,
It's kind of simple, isn't
there's
it?
I've got a lot of those deals. I've got some plaques that has the deal winner versus losers. And one of them, you're either part of the solution or part of the problem.
That's right. You're
I
in
mean,
one camp or the
that's
other.
exactly right.
Well, we're on Heart of Greenville, so let's talk about that.
Okay.
What do you love about Greenville? Let's be a part of the solution, and let's
Okay.
talk about what do you love about Greenville?
Well, I'm on the downhill run. Now I'm on it, but I mean,
Well, as long
mainly
as you're
it's
breathing, Newman, you can be
No.
part of that solution.
Okay, well, it's always been good to me. I can't complain.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things.
What's your favorite thing about Greenville? If somebody was considering moving here, what would you tell them? What would you say is the best thing about Greenville? Why
I'd
would
say
they
it's a
want to
great
come?
place to live. It's got great people. And it's what you make out of it. But you can do that wherever you are.
That's true.
It's just what you put into it. It's what you get out of it.
That's exactly right.
And I mean, it's just like you. You can sit in your office, wait on somebody to walk in and give you a listing, and wait for somebody to see your sign and call you and buy it. And I mean, you said something to me one day because I told you had that land, and I told you why I didn't list it.
Right.
And you said, well, it needs marketing. Well, I like marketing. I got into that because funeral homes weren't really into it. And when they started, we were in OGR, and they were one of the leaders in funeral home advertising and marketing. And I like marketing. And you said, boy, you hit me right in the face. I thought, well, okay, she had the right word. And, you know, that's what I mean. It's the same way with Greenville. And
it is about the marketing.
It is.
And you can't be the best kept secret, you know, and you have to get out there and share and let people know things are available and what we have. And
well, the way you've handled this marketing is great, because I mean, there wasn't social media when I was into that, but you have turned that around. And I mean, everybody knows who you are from that.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean,
I feel so blessed to be living in this generation that we have that opportunity. When I started 23 years ago, we didn't have social media.
No, I know it.
And the new agents that come in, I'm like, you're so blessed. You get to start way up here. Like we had to cold call people. Like we'd bring pizza in and just get out the phone book and just start calling people. It was a very different world back then. Only 23 years ago.
Yeah. Well, see, just like Daddy taught me on selling insurance, because I sold his funeral insurance at the funeral home. And he said, selling insurance, you just asked everybody you run into, because somebody got up that morning going to have to talk about buying an insurance policy. And that's the way it is. You just got to ask enough people.
That's right. And it's about being in the right place at the right time,
right.
You know, and networking.
Like the other thing is, and how you've mastered it, with all your exposure and all that you do, if you think about real estate, who are they going to think about? And that's what you want. That's what you're going. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And just like Katie that works for you. Now, her mother was our right hand when we had the funeral home. We couldn't run that funeral home without it. She was third in command. And if I hired somebody, the first thing I asked them, or started to, do you have any problem working for women? Well,
that's important.
One of them said, well, they've got a place. I said, well, son, you won't make it with me, because the top two are women, and I'm not running this place without either one of them.
That's right. I love that you respected them so much and knew that.
Well, my insurance partner was one of the first women lib when we worked for Mac McCall, Carlene. And she was ahead of her time on that. But I knew how women had been mistreated from her. And she taught me a lot on that insurance. She said, now, when you call on somebody, you be nice to that girl on the desk or the front and their secretary, because that's the key to getting in. And she told me how some people she'd get in. Some people had a hard time ever getting an appointment. But and it goes back to, you just got to treat people the way you'd want to be treated.
That's right. That golden rule.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
I mean, you can get it through the scriptures or anywhere else you want to, but.
That's exactly right.
And I was really late on nailing my stuff down, because I was 41 or 42 when I really knew for sure I was saved. Before that, I grew up in the Christian church. And, I was baptized at either Easter or Christmas like everybody else was. But, I mean, when I really nailed it down, and that's when my life turned around.
Really? What made you do that?
Well,
what happened at that age that...
Well, we'd gotten a new preacher at First Baptist, Roy Collins. And he could explain it where I could understand it. And he really did. And that's just a long story short. He was at the right time for me.
For you. And that's so true. Some of us, we all grew up in church all of our lives, and then you have to have these other moments that someone can say the same thing, but in a different way that makes complete sense to us.
Well, T.D. Jakes sums it up the best, is we get too wrapped up in religion and not enough on relationship.
That's true.
I've got a devotional Bible that I started reading. It's a read the Bible through in a year, and I think 85 or 86, Valerie gave it to me. And so I've read that. I read it every day.
Do you do that every year?
I've done it ever since then.
Wow.
I may get behind a few days, but I'll catch up. And my prayer list and my prayer time's in there.
Is it?
I've got a written list, because another preacher, Bob Hamilton, was at Ridgecrest. He wasn't my preacher, but when we had the funeral home, I'll never forget it. So my daddy was in the hospital, and I ran into him before that one day, and I asked him, I said, "Preacher, just put my dad on your prayer list." Well, a few days later, I ran into him at Cattleman's, and he stopped me walking by and said, "Newman, how's your dad?" And I said, "Well, he's doing better." He said, "Well, he's right there," and he pointed at the table like his desk. He said, "His name's right there on my prayer list."
Oh.
And that's when I started a written prayer list.
Oh, that inspired you to do that.
It did. I mean, it did.
I love
And I mean,
that.
that has given me more. And in that Devotional Bible, I've got dates and years when something happened in my life, good or bad, or people's different things. That I mean, when I open it every morning, I can, every now and then also, in 2000 so and so, or 1989 or 98, this happened, and it's amazing. You read the same thing, and I've read those verses that many times, and still every now and then in the morning you'll read it, and it'll slap you and hit you a whole different meaning.
Isn't that
And
so cool?
where it does that, I underline it and put the year, and I can look back and see how it got me ready for my daddy to die. The verses from what I underlined.
Man, that is so special.
It is.
That is, I need to adopt that.
Well, I mean,
I love that. So you read it every day, and you
Yeah.
read through the Bible, and then you make your notes
in
of
a
things
year,
going
you've
on.
read through it in a year. You read a New Testament, Old Testament, a Psalms, and a Proverb.
Okay. I firmly believe in that. I read the Jesus Calling most mornings, and I've done that for several years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like I've never read that before because
Yeah,
it
I know
speaks to
it.
me so differently,
Yeah,
those
I
Bible
mean,
verses. And,
Like the 23rd Psalm, I'd heard it so many times in the funeral business, and I've read it that many times, heard it preached, and every now and then. And you'd be amazed at the different way it affects different people.
it does.
I mean, they'll say something about it. And then Donnie Lane was one of my preacher boys that worked for me at the funeral home. And he's since passed away, but he started City Church in Amarillo. And I've kept up with that. His family have it going. It's a real neat inner city ministry.
Oh.
And I mean, there's several of those. And I mean, I've got a bunch of preacher boys that were young preachers starting off and have gone places, and some big preacher boys that's gone on places. And I mean, it's just, when Daddy was in the hospital one time, he had 40-something preachers praying for him.
Wow. That's a lot.
And that meant a lot.
That does. I mean, the power of the prayer
It
is
does.
incredible.
And but it's just, it goes back. Life's what you make it. It's
is.
like living here in Greenville. You can sit there and gripe about this or that, but man, it's got advantages. And I mean, I'm kind of the generation that kind of stays with the ones that stays with you. And then some of these younger ones that have started their own business, just like you can take John Hardaway. I knew him when he was an apprentice electrician, and I've watched him come up, and he's a good friend. And another one, if I need an electrician, and there's some other good electricians here, but and then same plumbers, whatever you need. There's one that I've either got help get started, or knew them when they started, or had used them for generations. And so, but it's just an interesting world.
It makes it really special having
It
those
does.
relationships.
It does.
It just makes it home. Well, Newman, I have one last question for you. I
Okay.
asked you to pick a number.
Yeah.
Okay, and you picked the number 12. But I want to ask you my own question.
Okay.
So, this is not question number 12, but after our conversation, I just feel like this is the question I need
Okay.
to ask you. How do you want to be remembered?
That's interesting. Somebody asked me that a long time ago. I want to be remembered as somebody that loves the Lord, and it showed. And sometimes I get a long ways from that, but that's the most important thing. If you don't have that relationship, it's those saying, you ain't got nothing.
That's right.
I mean, that's the most important thing there is. And it's the key to all of it. But I mean, I can't complain. I've got that relationship now. and I've been blessed with good health. And I mean, I'm the most blessed person you will ever know in your life. And now I'm the happiest.
You are the happiest I've seen you in
yeah.
the entire time I've known you.
Yeah.
Just, God did bless you with your friend in life,
Well,
and it's brought you to life.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that for you.
Yeah.
I love seeing you so happy.
Well, it's another one of Daddy's deal was I'd say, well, who's that? He said, man, don't ask him how he feels. He'll tell you. He said, if somebody asks you how you feel, just tell them great, because I mean they really don't care. And that kind of deal.
I know, but when I ask, I really do like to know.
I know. Well, I know you do that, but some people just
they really don't. They're just making
they just sit there.
conversation.
Yeah, well, have a great day. Bam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aw.
Anyway.
Well, Newman, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I think you and I could sit and talk for
Yeah,
another
well,
hour.
I mean, we could. I mean, I didn't know where we were time-wise, but
Well, I think we're in a good spot. I just
Okay.
want to thank you so much for your support and your love, and just you've always believed in me, and just even
Well,
sitting here talking
yeah.
to you and sharing, what you see in me,
Yeah.
and that means so much to me. And I respect you and so much.
I appreciate that, and I feel privileged and honored that you asked me to do this.
Well, thank you. You have been a fan, and I do appreciate
Well,
that.
I am one of your number one fans, girl.
Well, thank you.
And,
well, you're one of my favorites. So.
I appreciate that. Hold the thought.
Well, Newman, we're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all you've done in this community, all the families that you've touched their lives over the years when they went through tragedies, and just being an inspiration and giving back to the young people, to my generation, and helping to bring us up.
Well, it's been my pleasure and my privilege.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.